Welcome back, folks. This is Basir Pirzada, your real estate broker and your mortgage loan officer, all in one-stop shop. Today, we are going to talk about some significant developments, a lot of information to share with you. Jerome Powell just made a speech at the Jackson Hole venue. Jackson Hole is a venue of significant financial news, financial significance, because every time Federal Reserve wants to send a feeler out to the financial sectors, to the society in general about an upcoming financial decision, they kind of send a feeler out through the Jackson Hole address. So it's a way to prevent the markets from not getting shocked. Jerome Powell talked about the near-term outlook for the Federal Reserve. He mentioned that a year ago the Fed funds rate was at 5.25 to 5.5%. And he said that that restrictive policy of high interest rate was justified back then. But today, a year later, we are at 4.25 to 4.5% Fed funds rate. So it's justified now. An entire 1 percentage point decrease in Fed's funds rate over the last 1 year. But today, economy faces new unique challenges like tariffs, and that causes an unprecedented uncertainty in the economy, changes in trade, which means tariff negotiations and immigration policy, which means ICE deportations, are really impacting the economy. And this poses a great challenge in differentiating cyclical developments, which are short-term disruptions, from real long-term economic trends. So one thing is that tighter immigration policy is preventing labor force from growing. The unemployment rate has been largely stable at 4.2%, and any gains made in employment have been offset by deportations with the ICE deportations that are going on. The slowdown in jobs growth means that people have less money to spend, hence decreased consumer spending. Tariffs are driving prices up. Personal consumption expenditure in July rose about 2.9%, which is core PCE, rose 2.9% in July versus the same time last year. Tariffs are causing prices to increase, but the thing to note is that they're not causing the prices to increase all at once. So as Trump negotiates and renegotiates tariffs with different countries, their impacts on prices will be spread out over several months and years, causing another unique challenge for the monetary policy. And this prolonged inflationary pressure on prices caused by evolving tariff situation has to be managed by the Fed. Inflation above 2% has been consistent since COVID, so it's almost becoming like the new normal. And the Fed governors and Federal Reserve Chairman believes that that cannot be allowed to sustain, because that really indicates the depreciation of the U.S. dollar. And you all know that the U.S. financial markets cannot afford to sustain that or let it allow it to be sustained. But time has come to revisit the wisdom of our tight monetary policy. So when Jerome Powell said that, he didn't really give a real reason why the time has come. We obviously know there's a lot of pressure on him from President Trump, from behind the scenes, reduce interest rates. So that about face, he didn't really give reason why he's saying that the time has come to make some changes to our monetary policy. We're currently facing high inflation of 2.9%. Interest rates are high. But in Jerome Powell's opinion, they're moderately high, meaning not high enough. So that little statement right there says that he would have preferred interest rates to be a lot higher, but they are not high enough. But at the same time, now he's saying that he's going to possibly hinting at reducing interest rates on September 16th meeting, tells you that he's probably under a lot of pressure from President Trump. One thing Jerome Powell noted is that in the last couple of years, they've noticed that employment can run high. You can have high employment without causing inflation. Now, that's something that you can disagree with him, because there is inflation. Prices have gone up on basic commodities. So you can disagree with him on that point. And then overall, in the entire speech, Jerome Powell kept going back 20 years, how Fed always makes data-driven decisions, and we did this in 2008, and we did this in 2014, and we always make data-driven decisions. So it's almost like he is preparing the grounds for an event on September 16th, or a decision on September 16th. So people cannot come back and say that, you did not look at data. So they're trying to send a message out to the society and financial sectors that we always make decisions based on data. Fed Reserve Chairman did say that we're still focused on 2% inflation target, but we all know that it seems to be very elusive at this point. Some of the critiques that are happening about Fed is that what's the real plan after September 16th? The chairman didn't really comment on that, but to Jerome Powell's defense, Federal Reserve chairman and the governors always say that, we make decisions based on data as the economy evolves. So that's their answer to that question. One of the big concerns by critics is that during the Nixon era, President Nixon put a lot of pressure on Federal Reserve to reduce the interest rates, and Federal Reserve gave into that pressure, and it ended up opening Pandora's box of politicization of Federal Reserve, which in turn ended up inflation as high as 13%. So people are afraid that we may see a repeat of Nixon era if Trump is successful in politicizing Federal Reserve's financial decisions about interest rates. 2% inflation target is pretty much a thing of the past now, because since COVID, we have seen that it has been hovering over 2% despite the best efforts by Federal Reserve. Another thing in the news that is to note is that Trump has gone on social media, on his own social media platform, Truth Social, and he has alleged that Lisa Cook, one of the Federal Reserve governors, is involved in mortgage fraud allegedly, and he's firing her and stuff like that. So Lisa Cook, who's Lisa Cook? She is the first African-American Federal Reserve governor. Trump is targeting her, sending a message to the rest of the Federal Reserve governors that, hey, if you don't follow my line of reasoning about reducing interest rates, I'm going to come after you one by one. Now, at this point, a big critique of Jerome Powell is that he needs to step up and stand with Lisa Cook and really push back on this propaganda that President Trump is starting against Lisa Cook. But so far, Jerome Powell has not said anything, because I believe he has not said anything because he doesn't want to be sucked into this political drama or theater that President Trump is trying to create around Federal Reserve governors and their firing and his commentary about them. So rightly so, Jerome Powell is not taking the bait, but for how long, we'll see, because a lot of people are being very critical of Jerome Powell's silence. They say his silence is deafening. So as news evolves, I'll bring those to you. Thank you for watching, and please like, share, subscribe.